At Evergreen Castle, soldiers scream that it is a rebellion and Drake has started a rebellion. The captain of knights orders the soldiers to defend the throne room and protect his majesty as he slashes down the mercenaries. The commander of the Evergreen Knights, Rick, says that he will blow their heads off as he stands as a wall between the mercenaries. The mercenaries are taken aback, but they keep advancing. Rick says that the situation is unfavorable, and he will hold them off alone as he asks the other soldiers to request reinforcements, which they abide by. Rick thinks that they are outnumbered, as from behind, Drake comes in, saying that his judgment is quite impressive. The title of the ever-strongest knight is well-deserved, as he smirks. Drake comments that he should have demoted him and thrown him into the Shadow Knights, and what a shame it is. Rick says the rumors that it is a place for those who fell out of his favor were true, to which Drake responds that they must eliminate any variables in this revolution. Warrior Jindo from Sidrildo and Daryl, the former champion of the swordsmanship tournament, have great abilities, but are too upright. People like Lieutenant Shane are not needed in the Evergreen he will rule, so he put them under a dreamer like Carl Alexander. That place is the trash can of this country. Rick curses them, saying that their rebellion ends here and soon their men will bring reinforcements. Drake asks if he is talking about them, as he has apprehended 2 soldiers. Rick realizes that they have dried up, and as Drake informs him, they charged at him, saying that knights don't run, so he killed them as they wished. Risking their lives for something like beliefs, is that not irrational? At that moment, Rick sees the mercenary in front of him, and Rick's entire being screams that this man is dangerous. The mercenary says that even when he was a knight, he never felt this way, to which Rick replies that the strongest knight in Evergreen will kill him. Suppressing the instinct to run was his pride as the strongest in Evergreen, but in just that moment, Rick realizes that he is a frog in a well, as the mercenary penetrated his sword through his shoulder, causing him to cough up blood. The mercenary grabs him by his collar, resulting in an overwhelming defeat due to the indifference in power. As Drake asks if he thinks that he will surrender to him, the mercenary asks Drake what they should do, to which Drake tells him to dispose of him as he sees fit. The mercenary releases his aura onto Rick, causing him to dry up. Rick asks who the hell he is, to which the mercenary introduces himself as the leader of the weapon-best mercenary unit Glen Ibis, and he was once a candidate for the 5 warlords of Cade. The scene shifts into the throne room as Cain calls for his father. The king says that it is a secret passage through the royal family and that he can escape the castle through this path. He asks him to leave and find someone to ask for help, to which Cain asks about him, but comments that he is too far to fit through this passage. The king says that it's fine, parting with him, saying that this rebellion happened because of his incompetence, so he must take responsibility. As the door is barely holding down, the mercenaries scream that no matter how much they hit it, it won't open. It is a magically reinforced door. Cain cries out, but his father asks him to stay strong, insisting that he must survive and make sure to survive. He hugs him, saying to become a better man than he is, and that he always loved him as he asks him to go. The door is opened by Drake as the king says that he has been waiting for him. Drake comments that he is putting on an arrogant display and asks where he has hidden the crown prince, to which the king asks if he thinks he will tell him. As long as his son is alive, Drake will never be recognized as king, to which Drake says that he can't have gone far and must still be within Evergreen. He stabs him with a dagger, and the king, still worried about his son, dies. Drake asks Glenn to conduct a search around the castle, insisting that the prince can't have gone far, and he will publicly execute him in front of the people and announce the start of a new dynasty. The deadline is before sunset Alexander Oro, and to make sure to capture him alive. Glenn, with the soldiers, comments that dying because of the misfortune of having the wrong father is an unfair life. Nearby, people comment on what is happening, whispering that Prime Minister Drake has started a rebellion and that those are weapon-best mercenaries. They realize that Drake is going to be the king now, and they have unleashed many mercenaries to catch one kid. They are saying that anyone who hides him will have their entire family slaughtered, and they comment that Evergreen's good days are over, making Alexander shiver in frustration. Minerva asks if everyone heard that, and Alexander states that it seems the topic is clear. As Jagger says that they need to secure Prince Cian before the mercenaries do, and that is their goal from now on. The scene shifts into the city as soldiers run around searching for the prince. In pursuit of him, the soldiers ask if they have found him, to which they deny, saying that he's not here. Max thinks that he can't believe they already managed to chase him this far as he remembers his father, thinking that if it continues like this, it's only a matter of time before he goes. He prays for someone to save him and this country as Jagger grabs him by the mouth, consoling him that he is safe. Jagger assures him that from now on, they will take care of him. The scene shifts to a shop as Alexander says that so far, this is what they have discovered about the truth behind the rebellion. Max says that this is unbelievable. Even the dragon attack was part of Drake's plot. Jagger thinks that the king died and the weapon best inspected the castle. It seems there are various unfortunate connections intervening with that side. Minerva says that it doesn't seem like they are tracking us. However, mercenaries are everywhere searching for the prince, and if it continues like this, it's only a matter of time before they get caught. Alexander suggests taking the prince with them and hiding underground. There's a shelter prepared underground in case of a dragon invasion. It's not very spacious, but they have food and water, and they can hold out for a maximum of 1 week. Jagger thinks that, as expected, under the current conditions, this seems to be the best option. He asks what Prince Max thinks about that, to which Prince Max responds that he's tired now. After running away, hiding, and leaving the castle, he realizes he's an incompetent individual incapable of doing anything on his own. His father told him to survive until the end, but he can't think of any way to survive in his current state. Therefore, he asks them to just give up on him and at least let the rest of them survive. Zoe, shocked to hear this, screams, "How can he throw away his own life so easily? If he has the strength to die, then he should ask to live instead." As Jagger thinks about it, Sui's previous owners all committed suicide because of the curse of the magical cursed sword, making her sensitive to such issues. Jagger assures Prince Max that he understands he is deeply heartbroken and distrusted, but Minerva jumps in, saying that from now on this body will handle and take care of him. She emphasizes that this body will throw a tantrum, and as Jagger uses this to say something, she punches Prince Max, shocking everyone else. Minerva comments that a slap is a remedy for a weak horse, to which the others stare at Jagger. Jagger questions when he said that, and Prince Max replies that he has never even been hit by his father. Minerva counters that the trials don't kill him, but they make him stronger. If he doesn't have the strength to complain about how difficult it is, it means his life is still worth living. The emotion that evoked Max Evergreen, who was in despair, wasn't a desire for revenge or anger. It was the first time in his life that a woman treated him like this since he was born, sparking a longing for a new stimulus. Minerva tells him that if he understands, he should get up and be prepared to live determined to die, to which Prince Max agrees, calling him a master and saying that he will serve her as a master. This marks the moment when Minerva's #1 subordinate was born. The scene shifts as they come into discussion. Prince Max says he has just shown them his pathetic side, to which Jagger replies that he's glad he has gained his strength. Minerva asks if he saw the ability of this body to stop even a crying prince, and Jagger pats Minerva on the head, saying it's a good job. Sui is quite jealous of this and comments that they should return to the original matter now. Prince Max asks how they are going to resolve the rebellion. In his opinion, there is no solution at the moment. At first glance, their forces are overwhelmingly greater than the Shadow Knights, roughly estimated at around 100. He couldn't see their battle because he was inside the throne room, and they don't know which among them is strong or what abilities they are hiding. They are all unknown variables, to which Alexander responds that, in other words, the conditions given to them are limited, and they even lack information about the enemy. Jagger states that's the problem. If their conditions are the problem, they just need to change them. Alexander asks what he means by changing the conditions, to which Jagger says that it means they will go inside the territory together with the bait they will throw at him, and Max will have to endure some troubles and hardships. The scene shifts toward the plaza, as a scream announces that they have captured the escaped prince. The ones who captured Prince Max are the Shadow Knights of Evergreen, who subdued the dragon, and the worst among the 5 great heroes, the hero of condemnation, Signage Jagger. Jagger asks why he included that kind of catchphrase as they are presented themselves before Drake. Jagger states that there it is, the fish they are going to catch. 2 hours ago, as the Jagger said that everyone knew what they had to do, he emphasized that gathering information about the enemy was important, while he and Alexander would buy time. The others were to assess the number and deployment of the mercenaries. Zoe abided by the Jagger's instructions and ensured the children remained outside the designated security zone so they would be safe at home. However, if anything happened, they were to report to her. Minerva confirmed her understanding, while Zoe told the Jagger that she had something to say first. She thanked him for buying the new clothes and said she would cherish them for the rest of her life. The Jagger dismissed her gratitude, saying it was just clothes and nothing special. She still assured him that they could count on them. The scene shifted to the royal hall, where Drake stated that the dragon was raided and its secrets were buried in graves beneath the ground. He speculated that the cunning dragon must have revealed its intimate ties and collusion before dying. Drake addressed the hero of condemnation and the Shadow Knight, criticizing their actions and saying that they could have used that information to threaten the dragon, but instead they killed it. Moreover, they even captured the fleeing prince, who had been friendly with the Evergreen royal family. Drake expressed doubts about their intentions, wondering what wickedness and dark motives they had returned with. However, he hoped that their concern for the home was genuine. The Jagger asked Drake if he would trust them if they had come to seize an opportunity, thinking to himself that the old man was filled with suspicions. Drake asked what kind of opportunity the Jagger referred to. The Jagger explained that opportunities arose in the midst of war. He mentioned that Amelia had given birth to the first queen, and Carbon had formed an army for the first time since the country's founding. He continued, saying that if war broke out while neighboring countries remained unstable, Evergreen, at the continent's center, would become a land of opportunity. That was the reason they had returned. He was there for money and survival, while his companion sought honor and fame. Drake acknowledged the Jagger's response, saying it was a good answer. He decided to believe them and, as a sign of trust, introduced Evergreen's new partner in the revolution. Drake expressed his eagerness to meet the Jagger's group and presented Glenn Ibis, the leader of the weapon-best mercenary unit. Glenn greeted the Jagger as the hero of condemnation, then abruptly dashed toward him, cursing him to die in peace as he attacked. The Jagger blocked the blow with his sword, remarking that it was hard to call it a sign of trust when a blade was being pointed at him. Glenn responded that he couldn't allow the person who stole the red dragon sword to live. The Jagger calmly countered, saying that the sword had been rightfully and legally taken. Meanwhile, Alexander observed the situation and thought that if this continued, the Jagger would fall behind. The Jagger had lost the red dragon sword during the battle with the dragon, and without it, he lacked the strength to fight. The mercenary, on the other hand, had the momentum to kill him at any moment. Alexander desperately tried to think of a way to intervene. As the Jagger was being pushed back, Alexander screamed for them to stop and pleaded, his voice shrill, asking if they couldn't resolve the matter through dialogue first. The scene shifted to the dining hall, where Drake commented on the commotion, saying that there seemed to be a little misunderstanding. He proceeded to introduce Glenn again, calling him the mercenary of the Weapon Best unit. The Jagger interrupted, saying that he already knew who Glenn was, a former knight of Cade who had been dismissed on charges of war crimes. Glenn demanded to know how the Jagger knew that. The Jagger explained that the bastard sword was an award given by Cade's army to knights, and that Glenn's so-called rationality reflected Cade's mentality as a leader. The Jagger added that Cade's army conducted biological experiments to enhance combat power. Being chased away from Cade and becoming a mercenary meant that Glenn must have committed unforgivable acts, such as war crimes, possibly even civilian massacres. The Jagger admitted that he had improvised the war crime accusation but asked if he had hit the mark. Glenn smirked and confirmed that the Jagger's guess was accurate. He admitted that his master was Cade's legendary Silver Knight, Binoku Stein. Alexander, shocked by this revelation, thought to himself that Glenn had the potential to become the next epic hero. He wondered if they would have to fight people like that from now on. The Jagger stood up and called out to Alexander, warning him that showing fear on the battlefield would get him killed instantly. He told Alexander to get his head straight. The Jagger then excused them from the scene, saying that since his friend didn't seem to be feeling well, they would leave. As they walked away, Glenn remarked that he hoped to meet the Jagger on the battlefield someday. He asked if, when the time came to die, the Jagger would also struggle in fear. The Jagger grabbed a pancake from his hand, smirking as he replied, "Let's test that out later." He pulled Alexander aside and added that they should put a bounty on this person's head from now on. Glenn responded that they could place as many bounties as they wished. As the Jagger and Alexander left, Glenn asked Drake if they were going to leave the Hero of Condemnation and the Shadow Knights just like that. Drake acknowledged that there was definitely something suspicious going on, but Drake said that now was not the time to act. After the execution of Prince Max the next day, Drake planned to find an opportunity to deal with the Jagger and his group. The scene shifted to the prison, where Max sat in silence. He muttered to himself, wondering if it was finally time. He reached for his wig, pulled it off, and revealed that it was actually Minerva in disguise. Grinning, Minerva pouts out, saying that now it's this body's turn. As before, to safely enter Evergreen, they decided to attract the attention of the old man, the Prime Minister, and infiltrate the territory with bait. What they needed was bait as good as Prince Max. However, it was impossible for a weeping child like him to survive in such conditions, and breaking him out later would also be a hassle. So, they required an infiltration specialist to play the role of the prince, and that specialist was none other than Minerva herself. She explains this to the soldiers, saying that even soldiers with brains smaller than a walnut should understand by now after this explanation. While the soldiers stood dumbfounded, Minerva revealed that from the start, the one imprisoned wasn't Prince Max. It was her. Bidding farewell, she teleported away. One soldier told the other to report the matter to the captain, but the second soldier questioned, if the girl over there was disguised as Prince Max, where was the real prince now? The scene shifted to a house where Prince Max prayed for Minerva to return quickly. He fretted that if people discovered the prince wandering around the castle in this state, it would cause chaos. Max asked if everything was all right, and Jagger confirmed it. Noticing Max's expression, Jagger asked if he looked unwell, and Sui chimed in from behind, saying it was because he had overexcited himself. While Jagger was stalling the Prime Minister, the prince had been escorting and spying on the mercenaries earlier that day. When they encountered some soldiers asking their purpose, Sui had asked if she could inquire about something. Playing cute, the soldiers unknowingly got carried away and eagerly answered. The soldiers had then inquired what they needed to do, mentioning how dangerous it was in the area and advising them not to wander around. From their numbers to the way they were arranged, the soldiers had disclosed everything without hesitation. Thanks to Max, they had easily completed their reconnaissance. According to the intelligence gathered by Jagger and Max, the weapon-best mercenary unit occupying the castle consisted of 100 men. Their easy takeover of the castle was due to traitors within. The reason Jagger and his group took the risk of returning was to gauge the enemy's military strength. The total enemy force was composed of 130 members, 100 mercenaries, and 30 knights. On their side, they had only about 30 people, making a direct confrontation suicidal. Therefore, they devised a plan. Jagger would lure the mercenaries to a deserted area, while the Shadow Knights reclaimed the castle. Alexander brought out the carriage, announcing that it was on standby and ready to depart at any time. He added that they had sabotaged all the other carriages to delay pursuit. Jagger remarked that it was a waste to let someone like Alexander rot as a mere knight, to which Alexander responded that the compliment was too much. So he reminded them that they just had to wait for Sister Minerva's signal. Jagger agreed, saying it was about time, just as a scream echoed, announcing that the prince had escaped the prison. Jagger grinned, saying the timing was impeccable, and gave the signal to start the operation. He instructed Max to quickly join the knights. The prince thanked Jagger, promising to repay the favor tenfold, or maybe even 20-fold. Jagger patted him on the shoulder, saying that returning the favor twice would be enough. Suddenly, Minerva entered, proclaiming that she had become stronger and gained the resilience to endure any hardship. Grabbing Prince Max, she ordered him to give her clothes back. After retrieving her outfit, Minerva smirked and said that, as expected, the clothes looked their best on their rightful owner. Sui hugged her, saying that Minerva must have suffered in prison, but Minerva dismissed it, saying it had been a piece of cake. She urged Jagger that they should leave immediately, adding that she was eager to see the face of the mercenary leader. Jagger, however, told her to stay behind, explaining that he and Sui would be enough to lure the mercenaries away. Annoyed, Minerva asked if there was a limit to how much he could insult her. Jagger responded, saying that she had spoken the cursed swords and shared emotions with the host. When he had thrown her to the dragon, her emotions had flowed into him. Beneath her overwhelming resentment was fear. Even though Minerva claimed she wanted to fight deep down, she feared hurting others and taking lives. Minerva trembled, realizing that Jagger was saying she was afraid of fighting. If she rejected her destiny as a magic sword, what else could she do? Jagger gently patted her, assuring her that she wasn't useless. He said that there was something only she could do, something vital to protect someone important. He reminded her that she was his older sister, after all. With a small smile, Minerva remarked that his words were grand, and she supposed she had no choice but to comply, just this once. Jagger smiled back, calling her his partner and saying that he was counting on her. As Jagger boarded the carriage, the scene shifted to Minerva, who prayed for his safety, addressing him as her master. The scene shifted to the prison chamber where Drake, furious, demanded to know how the prince had escaped. He asked Glenn if the security wasn't supposed to be perfect. Glenn explained that surveillance had been set up throughout the building to ensure there wouldn't be any lapse in security. He glared at the soldiers, ordering them to explain what happened in a way that made sense. The soldiers stammered, stating that the prisoner had been there, then suddenly vanished. It turned out he wasn't the real prince at all, but a decoy, and the girl acting as the decoy had disappeared by teleporting with magic. Glenn pondered, thinking to himself, the hero and the Shadow Knights returned to Evergreen with this purpose from the start. He then said aloud that they would handle the situation themselves and suggested Drake stay in a safe place. Drake, offended, retorted that, of course, he should, since it was Glenn who had lost the prince. He sneered, asking what kind of candidate for the 5 virtues of Cade couldn't even keep track of a little kid. Glenn, visibly annoyed, warned Drake that they should clarify their positions. He reminded Drake that he wasn't a knight under his command, but a mercenary affiliated with Weapon Best. He advised Drake not to act in a way that could harm relations between them. Drake conceded and apologized, promising when the matter would be resolved and to ensure Glenn received generous compensation. Glenn smirked, calling it a wise decision, and wished him a long life as he moved out. As Glenn and his soldiers departed, one soldier asked if it was wise to leave the old man like that. Glenn brushed it off, saying the old man was too clueless to even grasp his own situation. The soldier remarked that Drake seemed too old to matter anymore. Glenn agreed, adding that they had already turned Evergreen into a puppet state, and that their focus should now be on finding the prince. Suddenly, a soldier rushed in to deliver urgent news. The carriage carrying the hero of condemnation had left the castle in a hurry. Glenn asked which direction it had gone. The soldier reported that it had headed toward the eastern outskirts of Evergreen. He added that the whereabouts of the Shadow Knight and the prince were unknown. Glenn considered the situation, musing that they could have attempted to disrupt their pursuers while escaping, but had instead chosen to take only one carriage, as if they wanted to be followed. He smiled, thinking that the hero of condemnation must be seeking a duel with him. Glenn grew irritated, wondering how the hero dared to provoke him. The soldier asked for further orders, and Glenn snapped, telling him to gather the men. The soldier asked how many, to which Glenn, glaring, responded, "Do you not know how to think for yourself? Bring them all." The scene shifted to Jagger, holding down Sui in her sword form between the plaza. Glenn appeared and commented on Jagger. Jagger remarked that Glenn was late. Glenn, eyeing the rain, sarcastically noted that calling him out to such a place was unreasonable. Jagger retorted that Glenn must be planning a celebration, given how many spectators he'd brought along. Glenn chuckled, explaining that he had come to kill the infamous hero of condemnation and thought it only proper to bring enough men to ensure Jagger had a worthy challenge. Jagger dryly responded that he wasn't sure how to reply to that. Glenn, with a grin, declared that he had already figured out Jagger's movements. They had left the castle using him as bait while the Shadow Knights attempted to reclaim it. He warned that everyone, whether at the castle or here, would die. Glenn prepared to finish his statement, saying that had Jagger surrendered, they all could have lived. However, due to Jagger's ill-conceived plan, everyone would now die. Jagger, unfazed, interrupted, saying that Glenn was mistaken. They would be the ones to die. Provokingly, Glenn scoffed, asking if Jagger really believed he could overcome a 100-to-10 power disparity with just strategy. Jagger corrected him, saying it wasn't one strategy, but two, and, more importantly, Glenn didn't have 100 men anymore. Jagger then called for Sui, who resonated with the rain droplets, using them to pierce Glenn. Glenn was beyond shocked, crying out, "What is this?" as his soldiers frantically called for help, realizing their captain had fallen. Jagger smiled, remarking that Glenn now had only 99 men. As the soldiers moved to ambush Jagger, he blocked their attack, using his Jagger skill to slam the ground. With a calculated technique, he scanned the battlefield, utilizing Frederick's vision of the Punisher to take out his enemies one by one. The soldiers were taken aback by Jagger's sudden, strange movements. One of them, trying to rally the others, said that despite Jagger being just one man, if they all attacked at once, they could overwhelm him. As they attempted a coordinated strike, Jagger, calling upon Sui, slashed through the ranks, leaving the soldiers dumbfounded. They frantically wondered where the attacks were coming from, only to realize that they were being struck from above, by the sky itself.